They are one of the world's biggest asset management organizations, with around $7.7 trillion in global assets under management and over 13 million individual investors globally. While they lag slightly behind their main competitor Blackrock in terms of global influence, both firms share many similarities in terms of their ability to manipulate the economy using their vast pools of investor capital or in pushing whatever evil political agenda they desire into the corporate world and beyond. They are one of the top 3 managers of index funds. They are Vanguard, and they dominate the globe with Blackrock, much to our disdain. Vanguard is now the world's biggest supplier of mutual funds and the world's second largest provider of ETFs, exchange-traded funds. When rivals join a new market, their margins are slashed and outflows skyrocket, a phenomenon referred to as the Vanguard effect. This impact recognizes their potential to persuade other funds to decrease their costs in order to compete, which has already cost Vanguard's competitor $200 billion in active fund fees in recent years. Furthermore, since its inception 50 years ago, Vanguard has saved its own investors almost $175 billion in management fees and $140 billion in trading costs. Overall, Vanguard has driven down costs throughout the sector to the point that they have cost its rivals over $1.3 trillion in lost income during their lifespan. So, there should be no doubts about how Vanguard has become so dominant. They have undercut their rivals and, together with Blackrock, have become cherished pets of the governing elite, driving their expansion and influence over the rest of the business world. After all, the firm is a mutual, which means that people who own a substantial portion of Vanguard control the company and its direction. What they say is true, and when they act, the rest of the world follows. All they have to do is influence the corporate world, and therefore all the firms under its control is apply it inside their own company and watch as the rest of the world follow suit. You've probably heard that some corporation has complete control over everything, and there's nothing you can do about it. And you've probably also heard countless mainstream puppets rush to the defense of Blackrock and their cabal, as well as any other corporations, to explain why this is all a bunch of conspiracy theories. But after all, we're here today to explain precisely what's going on and to put the record straight. It is true that Vanguard wields enormous power and are not hesitant to use it. So, does Vanguard really rule the world? No, it does not. They are listed as major owners on every publicly traded company you can locate, but they don't really own those shares. They merely hold them for their clients. That means you don't have to keep the shares yourself. Instead, you can utilize Vanguard, which has simple software and an easy-to-use interface, making things much simpler all around. But here's where things become dangerous, since Vanguard pretends to hold these shares. Vanguard has the authority to utilize your voting rights whenever and wherever they choose once they have possession of your shares. That is, if they want ESG and you don't, Vanguard will vote against you in a manner that favors them anyway. Vanguard may even employ the threat of voting with these shares when they control 15% of all voting rights in a big $100 billion corporation, and they are just a simple phone call away from the individuals making the ultimate decisions. So, if anything they don't like occurs, it's simple for them to call the C-suite executives and tell them exactly what's going to happen. Again, when you have 15% of the voting rights, you may eliminate a company's capacity to make its own choices, since the great majority of shares never vote. That means Vanguard can often command an absolute majority in voting choices, and even if they can't, all they need to do is convince 1 or 2 investors to their side, and they get what they want. In this regard, many times a random investor has been given limitless access to private aircraft, private yachts, and large duffel bags filled with cash, only to have their abrupt change of heart in voting intentions become clear shortly after. As if all of that wasn't enough, This influence is always powerful enough to compel board members onto these firms that they control but are ultimately determined by Vanguard. So, they literally have personnel on the inside, choosing what happens to the firm, even though Vanguard does not own a single share. To be honest, they should have no authority to influence these firms at all, but they instead wield all the power and virtually dictate the corporate cabal that exists today, along with Blackrock, and that is the unfortunate reality of investing in large corporations these days. They are often not there to produce value for their shareholders, as they say, but rather to generate money from wicked corporate behemoths like Vanguard and Blackrock. But how has Vanguard been able to develop so quickly? No other company has grown at such a rapid rate since the financial crisis. Vanguard has drawn in an extra $6.7 trillion in assets since 2009, when it had just $1 trillion in assets under management, representing a more than 770% rise since then. Even Blackrock has been unable to keep up, increasing by 257%, or about 1/3 as much, within the same time span. If present growth rates continue, Vanguard will surpass Blackrock in size within the next decade. Still, not everything is well for Vanguard, which is dealing with a slew of challenges, many of which are public and imply Vanguard is not as solid as they would have us think. This tremendously successful patent class, which enabled customers to earn more than $100 billion in extra investment returns, expired as recently as May 16, 2023. That is, after 20 years, competing fund managers are now allowed to copy Vanguard's distinctive fund structure without obtaining permission from Vanguard. But more crucially, Vanguard has become a target because of their lack of control. We can see the business is facing a two-frontal assault on its ESG strategy as the rest of the world realizes how much of a sham this whole thing is, and those pushing this agenda condemn the Vanguard for not going far enough. According to Morningstar, Vanguard only backed 28% of important ESG resolutions, which is less than half of its two closest competitors, BlackRock and State Street, and significantly worse for Vanguard. The measures they voted against were often resolutions on civil rights and racial justice, as well as environmental issues, indicating that Vanguard has irritated the left and is now in their sights after previously being their favorite star child. They sowed the wind, and now they will harvest the whirlwind, as we like to say. In terms of financial engagement, Vanguard still maintains at least $86 billion in coal, making it the world's largest coal investor. They still possess far over $10 billion in stock for oil firms that are now trying to destroy the Amazon rainforest alone, not to mention the hundreds of billions in fossil fuel equities they control elsewhere. Those who used to support ESG have now realized that it was never about the environment at all. Those who are sincerely concerned about this problem are now fervent Vanguard opponents, while Vanguard has been extensively attacked by the anti-ESG movement in the United States and across the globe. When it became clear that ESG was all a scam, some became enraged because it wasn't about improving the world and saving the environment. But the rest of us became enraged because ESG was being used to control us all while making energy more expensive for millions of people for no reason, and that it was really just a massive money grab coming from the world's biggest corporations like Vanguard and blessed by corrupt politicians who had been bought off and to control us all. So, not only was all this immoral, but it was also unlawful. Vanguard is under attack from both sides of the institution, as well as from everyone on the bottom level. Now, several other journalists, including this channel, are revealing the truth about Vanguard, and we, unlike these corrupt politicians, cannot be paid off. To top it all off, Vanguard will have to choose a side, and whichever way they go, they will suffer with a proposition. They will suffer with a proportion of their client base likely to be withdrawn in a scenario similar to how BlackRock had it when Republican state treasurers withdrew $3 billion from their funds over their compliance with ESG. Long allowed Vanguard's losses to continue. After all, it was only punishment for their tax evasion and absurdly uncompetitive tactics that fueled their expansion. So, what are your thoughts on all of this? Let us know in the comments. As always, thank you for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe to stay up to date in the world of economics.